Hello everybody, welcome back to Screen Stars. I'm here today to review the 2018 action horror movie Corbin Nash. A movie that lacks an awful lot of originality in many areas, bogs itself down in pretty terrible writing and narrative, but has some pretty interesting ideas going on too. And what we essentially get with this movie is we meet police detective Corbin Nash, who's a very brooding, angry character who is on the trail of some, what do you think? It's some kind of serial killer, he assumes, that's taking children and people, and he's on the trail of it, of these killings, and ultimately he ends up getting embroiled in some horrific things, vampires of the night and all this horrible evil stuff, and he gets sucked deeper and deeper into it, and he learns that it is kind of his heritage and his destiny, and his parents battled these creatures many years ago, as he's told by Rutger Hauer, and it's his destiny, which he thinks is a load of old twaddle, until he realises actually this could be true. Now, it's actually quite a hard film to describe this, because the narrative of this film is all over the place. It doesn't really have a tangible story. It is literally all over the place, this narrative. The writing for this movie is amongst the shoddiest I've ever seen in regards to storytelling. We have a number of named actors in here. We have Malcolm McDowell and Rutger Hauer, but they are little more than cameos, and they are given criminally very little to do. The guy playing Corbin Nash is particularly unlikable, I felt. He was heavy on the brooding, and there was very little about him to like. There was some Corey Feldman's in this movie, completely unrecognisable as some kind of transvestite vampire. I didn't even realise it was him until I looked it up, and I was aghast. I couldn't believe it. Now, his performance is either impressively eccentric and over the top, or incredibly bad, depending on your view of the performance. I'm somewhere in the middle. It's almost like he's tried to do a strange take on Heath Ledger's Joker. I don't think it works. It works sometimes in the movie, but quite a lot of the times it just comes off as a bit odd, the performance, and I didn't quite understand it. But the idea was interesting. I've never really seen it in a vampire movie before, so I didn't mind the idea. The whole aspect of this movie is particularly confusing. Like I say, you can't nail down a story here. It's some kind of origin story for the lead character Corbin Nash, but it's told so shoddily that the big chunks of the movie, nothing happens. You're just seeing Corey Feldman and his vampire partner travel around kidnapping people to be food for the vampires, and then it shifts to a strange fight club scene where Corbin Nash is abducted and forced to fight in this underground fight club for the vampires, which just seemed a bit tacked on. A lot of the stuff in this movie seemed a bit tacked on. It was almost like they were writing the scenes the night before just to flesh out the movie or something and make it more interesting, and it just confused the movie even more. It kept getting bogged down with jumping back and forth in regards to jumping into the past and then back to the present, and you got a bit confused as to what were happening and when it was happening, and they were telling things you didn't need to tell. I think they overcomplicated what essentially was a very simple story. The story was this detective, Corbin Nash, was to become some kind of vampire hunter. Well, get on with it then. Get him to that stage, because when we finally get there, the last 20 minutes of the movie is by far the best part of this movie. The action delivers. It's pretty good, and it's pretty cool, and it's pretty stylised how they do it. But leading up to it, the rest of the film is just there's some good ideas in it. It is quite stylised in how they filmed it, but they just bog it down with all this exposition and nonsensical storytelling that ruins the movie, unfortunately. And some of the dialogue in this movie, I'm going to give you a line here that Corey Feldman says when he walks into a room, and he literally says this line, shh, I smell something. That's what he says, shh, I smell something. I kid you not, that's a piece of dialogue in this movie. This movie tries way too hard to be foreboding, and it just comes off as boring at times. And like I say, the lead, they don't really give you anything to like about him at all, and it is too Blade. It's too much like Blade by the end. So it lacks originality. But there's some really great ideas in this movie. And some of the way they film some of the scenes are very interesting. I appreciated what Corey Feldman was trying to do. I'm just not sure it worked. And I think this probably would maybe have been better as a TV show rather than a movie. It kind of feels like that there's going to be more of these movies coming if it's successful. Now, that they might be better because we've got to the part now where he is this vampire killer guy by the end. So it might hit the ground running if there's another one of these movies. And if another one of these movies is anything like the last 20 minutes of this movie, then I would be interested in seeing it. But this movie dragged its heels for far too long, trying to get to the point where he becomes his destiny, this Corbin Nash character. So I think this film is a missed opportunity. I'm not going to say I didn't enjoy the film, because there are aspects of it that I did. It's quite stylised. If you like vampire movies, there's quite a lot to enjoy here. It's not what you would call scary, but the action when it does kick in is pretty impressive. But there's too much wrong with this movie. They make too many mistakes with this movie. But like I said, I think there might be some things to enjoy. So I'm going to give this a 5.5 out of 10 here. They take far too long to get to the good stuff in this movie. But when they finally give you the good stuff, it's worth watching. So if you're a fan of vampire movies and you like action movies and you like some interesting ideas in your movies, there's stuff here to enjoy. But there are an awful lot of flaws with this movie, so just be wary. Thanks for watching, everyone.